Deserve.
Sorry, can you please repeat it?
Something to help to deserve.
Deserve, okay.
A value to a customer.
Value for customer. Okay, that's a very good start to talk about the customer. I think the most important person in a business is the customer. That's good. Okay, what's important to the customer? Okay, anybody, anything else?
Something that customer sees, feels, experiences, and delighted about it.
Okay, so I think that's even a great definition than what I'm going to probably flash here on the screen. So it's all about the customer. It's about what the customer wants, what the customer sees, perceives, experiences. So it's all about the customer. I think that's very, very important that all of us understand, even when we are going to start a business or we are part of a business transaction. Yeah, right. Sorry.
Carry on.
Okay, so I think it's all about the customer. So this is what I have as a definition here. Value is anything that the customer is willing to pay for. Definitely, it is about what the customer deserves. It's what the customer is asking. But if you look at from a business sense, from a business and pure business transaction sense, yes, we are talking about the customer, who is the most important part of the business. And then we're talking about from the obviously, if you've all read the book The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt, he talks about the goal of a business is to make money, right? So we are bringing the concept of what's that money transaction that's going to happen for what the customer is willing to pay. So we are not going to get too deep into the manufacturing world or the IT world here, but a simple concept of the business. So anything that the customer is willing to pay for is what value is. So that we'll take this definition through the presentation and then talk more about this. So now we spoke about value chain. Value. Now what is a value chain? Can anybody give examples or probably talk through what according to you is a value chain?
Step-by-step business process, sir.
Okay, step-by-step business process. Yeah, that's a good definition. Thank you. Anybody else? So who are the different portions of it? I mean, if there is a chain or a process, there are going to be links of the chain, right? So in the value chain, what are the different links that we would have?
So maybe it begins with the customer and ends with the customer, from request to fulfillment.
Yeah, perfect. So definitely the customer is the most important portion. Like I said initially, yes, it starts with the customer. So who else would be right before the customer? Process, okay, but from a people standpoint, business entity standpoint. User, okay. So here I think we're talking about customer and user being the same.
I think service provider probably.
Service provider, thank you. So in terms of services, yes, we have a service provider, okay. So the examples that I've given simply are like, let's say the restaurants, or it could just be a back-end office. It could be a educational institution. So we're talking about the service providers if it's going to be a service. But if it's going to be a product, we're talking about the manufacturing units. So if it's going to be an automobile company, a heavy machinery manufacturer, so and so. So we talked about a customer, and then we've talked about a service provider or a manufacturer. So who else is part of this value chain?
Suppliers.
Exactly. So we're talking about suppliers. So this is what we're going to talk about today from a value chain perspective. And like we said initially, yes, it does start from customer and end back with the customer, because from an information flow standpoint, the customer communicates as to what is needed by the customer, what does he or she perceive as value. That information goes through the service provider or the manufacturer and goes to the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers who work together to satisfy the need of the customer. So the information flow goes from customer to supplier through the manufacturer, and the product or service flows back to the customer. So it does start with the customer and end with the customer if you look at both the information flow and the material flow. Okay, any questions before I go to the next slide?
So how this value chain is different from SIPOC?
Okay, good question. Very good question. I know for people who are not familiar with SIPOC, SIPOC is nothing but supplier, input, process, output, and then customer. So SIPOC is more a tunnel division of a particular process. So this is an end-to-end overall value chain that we're talking about and how value flows through it. And SIPOC can be more at a next level, at a micro level. When you look at, let's say, a manufacturing process or a transactional process, so you're going into a much detailed level. This is an overall, if I should say, several SIPOCs could be linked together, because customer necessarily does not have to be the end user, but we are looking at internal customers also can be looked at in the SIPOC. So if you look at it as a chain and the links, so it could be several SIPOCs, individual SIPOCs could be individual links, and you tie in a lot of different SIPOCs to form this overall value chain. The reason I'm saying that is, if you draw a SIPOC, let's take the educational institution. Drawing an overall SIPOC for overall educational institution is a very, very tough job, because there are so many different processes. So SIPOC, you can pick, let's say, the administrative process. Even educational institution administration will have, like, say, fee payment process could be an individual process. And then from an administration standpoint, how do you administer, the overall general administration? How do you take care of transportation for the school or college? So SIPOC is more a process view than an end-to-end business view. So I would just look at it as individual SIPOCs can be linked together, which will form the overall value chain. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Let's move on to the next question. And this is where I talked about the interactive session. So now with these two perspectives, one is on what value means, and the second is on what a value chain is. I would want people to tell me, when you go to a doctor to get vaccination, let's say, I know we've had the COVID all around us, when the vaccine is going to come, what do you perceive as the value when you go to a doctor for vaccination? You're the customer, you're going to go to the doctor for a COVID vaccination. What is the value that you as a customer perceive there?
So his educational background, his experience, overall experience, and the customer reviews probably.
Okay, you're a very great customer, sir. Whoever gave the response, you're a great customer, because you're looking at the educational background, the experience of the doctor also has value. Many a times people tend to miss that point. Okay, great. Thank you for that answer. Anything else? What anybody else perceives as value?
After coming out of his cabin, I should not get COVID.
Okay, not to probably get the disease is your way of defining the value. Okay. Anything else?
So the place of the doctor and the surrounding hygiene.
Okay, so the atmosphere, the hospital environment, because you want a hygienic environment. The vaccine could be good, the doctor could be good, but the place where it's administered is supposed to be definitely hygienic. That's good. Okay, what else?
Vaccination, it's like a lifespan, so 1 year or 2 years. So
Okay.
again, we need to come.
Great. So you're talking about now effectiveness of the vaccine in terms of the duration. Like for instance, I know we have Pfizer, we have Johnson. There are so many different companies who are competing now. So now you're getting to the vaccine portion of it and how effective and reliable the vaccine could be. So I've got few more examples, so we'll just stop here in this example. Now we had 4 people give 4 different perception of what the value they are looking for. And I know some people could just say, hey, I'm just looking at that couple of seconds where the needle is inside my body, that moment as what is value. Okay. But then that I've got some very good customers here who are looking at an overall experience from the hospital environment, hygiene, and then the background of the doctor. So that is what's very important to understand. And every customer is going to perceive value differently. Because technically, if you know how to inject yourself, all you need is the vaccine and you could do the injection by yourself. But then you do question whether does this doctor know enough how to administer the vaccine? Maybe there is some procedure how it need to be stored. So the point here is different customers perceive value differently. That's very important. So you're going to a restaurant. So what is the value in a restaurant?
So again,
Taste of the
talking
food.
about like, yeah, I mean, talking
Hygiene.
about your money versus quality, like, everything counts, like how you are treated right from welcome to the end. I mean,
Okay.
till the dessert thing, and the hygiene, overall ambience, and almost every part of till the time you spend in the restaurant, like, the service and the people how interact with you, as well as the functional of your instruments inside, ambience. What I mean, AC is working properly, fans are there, not there, those things, table manner, the things.
Okay, great. I think so. What you're referring to is like hospitality and how you're being treated, the ambience, the overall experience is what you're rating. Great. Okay. So anybody else?
Then the quality as well as taste of the food.
Quality of the food, taste of the food. Great.
And like barbecue does, follow up. You are alive next day.
Okay. So if you look at, let's say, I mean, I'm just giving a very simple example here. Let's say a dosa. A dosa at home, how much do you think it might cost you to make, roughly?
Maybe 15 rupees, 10 rupees.
Okay, 10 to 15 rupees. How much would it cost if you go to Saravana Bhavan or any of the good vegetarian restaurants?
60 rupees.
60 rupees. Okay. How much would it cost if you go to ITC Grand Chola or any of the 5-star hotels?
400 rupees.
600 to
400.
700.
Okay, okay. So what has changed? What is changing? I mean, imagine the quality of the food. A dosa that you eat at home, many people like the dosa that their wives or husbands or parents make. What is the difference then between the 10 to 15 rupees to 60 rupees to 400 rupees?
Experience.
Quality.
Experience, quality, okay.
I think the norms and regulation which a 5-star restaurant has to follow before, I mean, managing their services.
Okay.
We are paying for that additional cost.
Okay, good. So I think what we're talking about when we use the words quality, service, taste, etc., we are again defining value there. I want us to really think about it deeply. That's why I'm spending more time here, because it's very important when you need to define what value is, what's the customer willing to pay for. Because a person going to Saravana Bhavan will say, hey, this is the best I can pay 60 rupees. Yes, I'm done. I cannot go to ITC Grand Chola. But then there are people who want to get that experience of going into a place like ITC Grand Chola, being treated the way that you do get treated, and the silverware that's around you. So you pay for that value. We are not talking about right and wrong here. Is it correct or not? We're talking about who the customer is and what's the value that they perceive. That's very important. So similarly, educational institution, what's the difference between, a school which is probably just next door, you think about something which is with an air conditioning school, when we talk about like very elite schools. So again, what is the difference? But then what according to you is value in an educational institution?
Quality of education.
Okay, quality of education. And how do you measure the quality of education?
Yeah, so the
Uh,
see the syllabus more or less will remain same across the school, but the difference is made where you have a much experienced teacher, the way of treating the students, and again proper follow up and the result which is measurable at the end of the year.
Okay. Anybody else?
The history of the school that shows that the student has become a chief minister of the state.
Okay. Okay. So we talked about one in terms of the students who come out of the school, what kind of positions in life do they get to? And another person defined about the experience of the teacher, so that how they teach and impart the education to the student. And I'm sure some of you would talk about, hey, all this is good, but I want a good ambience. I want the infrastructure to be really good. I want a good canteen where the kids can eat in lunch. I mean, again, the point here is the different customer needs could be varying, and the value that the customer is willing to pay for will also differ. Now we talked about services so far. Let's just quickly talk about a product. How cheap can a cell phone be today? What's the lowest price cell phone that you can buy in the market today?
1,100.
1,100. And what's an iPhone Pro Max, iPhone 12 Pro Max cost you today?
1,25,000.
89,000.
Okay.
1,26,000.
Yeah. So the top end model, if I'm not wrong, goes all the way to 1,59,000 on an iPhone 12. So what would, I mean, end of the day, I know many people say, hey, it's a phone. I just pick up and call somebody. If a 1,100 rupees phone can do the same as a 1,59,000 phone, why would I buy this versus that, right? So what, as a customer, what do you see as value in a phone?
The age of the person also is important.
Okay. But the age of the person means, so the customers, those customers who are older would expect something different from a phone compared to the younger generation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So
here
what?
we need to look about the features of the phone
Okay. Okay. Good.
and the product quality. It's like so iPhone we can have life cycle. So 5 to 6 years we don't have any software complaints like that.
Very good. Okay. Reliability and no issues for 5, 6 years life cycle. Okay. And you did talk about the features. So if you look at, again, I'm not promoting iPhone here, but a phone is not a phone anymore. It is more than a phone. If you saw one of the applications on the iPhone 12 Pro, you have a 3D immersive visualization where you can look at layout planning for your facility using that. So for an engineer who's doing layout planning, that feature could be something that's really exciting and make their job very easier. So value that an iPhone 12 provides that engineer for the company would be completely different. They are taking movies now using iPhone 12. So instead of investing a very expensive video camera, several movies are being shot using iPhone 12. So the customer experience and customer value is completely different today. I don't want to drag this too long, and I think the same holds good for a bike or any of the other products. The point here is the customer segmentation should be different in terms of who is the customer you're trying to sell your product to. So understanding what their expectations are and what are they willing to pay for is a very, very important step in value chain engineering. Because unless you know who your customer is and what they're willing to pay for, I think no business can be successful. I hope I try to drive that point through these simple examples. Any questions before we move on to the next slide? Okay. So we're going to talk about 7 R's of value chain here. So I did talk about what a value chain is. You start with the customer and end with the customer, but you have the service provider or the manufacturer, and then the supplier. So what are the 7 R's? We're talking about what should go right in a value chain. The right product, the right location, right quality, right quantity, right customer, right time, at the right cost. So again, there could be some more rights that you can think of. You could talk about compliance, you can talk about experience. There are a lot of other things you could go on this. But I feel these are like mandatory in today's world. Whatever product that you're making or whatever service that you're offering, these are 7 things that you got to make right. And from today's presentation standpoint, I would like to take only these 2 in scope on time and money. One of my uncles really taught me this. In fact, Arul is here in this training today. His father taught me this. He said, what's the difference between a scientist and an engineer? And I will never forget that in my life. So I'm an engineer that drove home to me. A scientist has got all the time in the world and all the money in the world, technically. But then an engineer doesn't. An engineer is always pressed for time and always pressed for money. So I feel most of the business problems that we have are around time and money. So I'm going to pick these 2 topics today as we go deeper into the value chain world. So we'll talk about cost first. Again, just to go back in terms of how the manufacturing world started in the early 1900s, Ford was one of the first ones to, be the pioneer in the manufacturing, automobile manufacturing. So the concept of Ford was to make everything inside the facility, from the nut bolt washer till all the way to the chassis, engine, everything. So that was called as vertical integration. So if you really think about it from that perspective, I'm sure most of you are using Dell desktops. So in a Dell desktop, what exactly does Dell manufacture? Hello?
Nothing. They don't manufacture anything.
Okay.
Except assembly.
Okay, great. So we already have the answer from one of the participants. Thank you. So Dell does not manufacture anything. So if you really think about it, if some of you think, hey, oh yeah, Dell manufactures the monitor, yet it says Dell in front of it, but then that could pretty much be done by Sony or HP. It's just the logo of Dell that's on it. If you think about the mouse and the keyboard, that comes from Logitech and they have the brand on it. If you're thinking about the CPU and everything inside it, it's pretty much from different third parties. So what does Dell do then? The Dell desktop, when you say Dell, then what does Dell do?
They don't even assemble.
Exactly. So it's the actual assembly is done by the customer. It comes in a box in separate pieces. We take it and then pull the right USB ports, USB cables, and then put it in the right USB slots. Assembly is done by us. Think about it. You might say packaging. No, packaging will be done by third-party logistics. It could be TVS Logistics doing the packaging for Dell. Any packaging company to do that, right? So the monitor could come from Sony in a separate truck. The keyboard and mouse and all that could come on a separate truck, and they just do the sorting and do the packaging and then ship it to the customer. So Dell's business model is called as virtual integration, and this is what the Michael Dell had to say about virtual integration. Virtual integration means you basically stitch together a business with partners that are treated as if they're inside the company. If some of you have had a chance to visit Hyundai is a very good example of, in terms of not technically virtual integration, but they have most of their suppliers also on campus, or at the best store the suppliers inventory on campus. In fact, they do have most of the suppliers in and around within 100 kilometers. So every company is trying to do that now in terms of virtually integrating the entire supply chain. So we're talking about the manufacturing, the suppliers, everybody kind of stitched together. So it is a business that is stitched together virtually. So that's the business model we need to think about. Amazon is another example in this regard. So if you go on and on from legacy manufacturing to what we are in the modern world, there is more of virtual integration. So when we are saying integration, you should think about again the value chain that we spoke about. We are looking at integrating these three people. We are trying to integrate the customer, the service provider or the manufacturer, and the supplier. So value chain is all about integrating this entire value chain together as though they are all in the same place or in the same company. But if you really think about it, we have expanded globally. Every manufacturing has expanded globally. Every service has been expanded globally. Even though you think about sitting in a restaurant and then eating there, there is still a lot of things that happen globally. Even in ITC Grand Chola, if you think about it, most of the software and equipment could have been imported from there. Some of the exquisite food that you eat would have been imported. So even in a restaurant, we're talking about stitching together the customer, the services, the product, and the supplier together in terms of giving that experience to the customer right there. So that's what the value chain engineering is all about. How do we stitch everybody together to get to this and what Dell has achieved when all they do is, I would say Dell is a value chain company. So I'll tell you what's the advantage of it, and I'm just looking at it under cost. So we'll talk about flexible business quickly. Any questions before we move on to this?
I think more than a question, it is an observation, especially when we are now passing through this pandemic. This virtual integration becomes all the more critical, and it opens up very new opportunities, I would say. Without it, a company cannot survive.
Correct. Exactly. And I think that's a very, very good point. And if you see, everybody is adapting to this business model now. It could be our kids' education. We can see how the online classes have come up. My kids are now on to chess classes and other programming classes as well, where that's happening virtually. The medical shop whom I went and got the medicines from, he's now ready to just send the pictures on WhatsApp, transact online, and then ask somebody to come and give it in my house. So I think everybody is going towards the virtual integration. That's a very good point. And I think the pandemic is changing the perspective on how value flows. It need not be a physical transaction. It can be a virtual transaction. Very good point. Okay, we're almost kind of the halfway mark on time perspective. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and then go deeper. So I'm going to talk about how a business should be flexible and why it's so important from a virtual integrated value chain. So we're going to talk about fixed costs and variable costs quickly. So any examples from the audience here on what are some examples for a fixed cost? And what do you mean by fixed cost? Maybe before that, what do you mean by fixed cost?
Cost that doesn't change by the number of items you are producing.
Excellent. So it doesn't matter whether we service 10 customers or 100 customers, either I make 10 product or 100 product, the cost of it doesn't change. So that is called as fixed cost. So what are some fixed costs in an organization that you can find? It could be service, it could be manufacturing.
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure, definitely that's a first and good one. We do plan for a capacity. If you're planning for like 100 employees, then we have an office that will hold 100 employees. But it doesn't matter whether you have 2% turning up to work that day or 100%. We are going to pay the same rent, or all the furnitures that we've already bought. It's the same depreciation. So it's just the fixed cost. Infrastructure is definitely a big one. What else?
Salaries.
Okay, but one word of caution on salaries there. Again, it could be different for different environments. I do have a small org structure here. So this is for the management or office staff kind of a salary, because you don't generally flex your manpower based on the output. But we do in modern organizations now in the IT field. One, you either outsource some of the work to third parties, so you might pay it as services, transaction cost, or you could still have a portion of your workforce as a variable, a temporary workforce. So those will not come at a fixed cost. Those will come at a variable. We'll talk about that shortly. But this would be the administrative, the managers, the vice presidents, presidents, some of the fixed people. Just because your volume changes or transaction changes, you don't change them. So that comes under fixed cost. Yes. Anything else that you can think of?
The hardware, say like the machinery.
Yeah.
In case of the production thing.
I'm very happy to get the answer in the same order that I have exactly. So even in an office, we're talking about number of desktops, printers, or in a manufacturing environment, the machinery, etc. Great. So tooling, tools, some of the consumables. So these are all would be like fixed costs. When I say consumables, it will be related to again these tooling, etc. to maintain the tooling, etc. But consumables could come in variable as well. So variable costs, some of the examples. Which is the biggest variable cost from a manufacturing environment standpoint?
Raw material?
Yeah, material and man or the workers. So this is where I said we will have a big portion of it in both fixed costs and as well as variable costs. So this will be the employees who can be flexed based on the number of widgets that we make. So we do have the variable cost for the people, the number of production workforce or who can be flexible, and as well as the material costs. And the other things do follow: transportation, logistics, and the consumables like paint, etc., and also the logistics within the facilities. So why I'm bringing about this fixed and variable portion is, if you think about Dell again, what has Dell done here? Dell, how much of what would be the percentage do you think on a a legacy company versus Dell, like Ford kind of a company? How would this look like for Dell? How would this look like, fixed versus variable?
Maybe 10 to 20% fixed cost when it comes
for
to
Dell. Yeah. So maybe Ford kind of companies would definitely be like even 50-60%. So where I'm getting to is modern organizations are looking at how to make this fixed cost, most of it, into variable. That's a very, very important step in a value chain engineering. You look at how your entire value chain can be flexible. Flexibility and agility are two important things that we need to look at in a value chain because as you see, the business cycles, we're going to talk about that later in the presentation. Business cycles are more short term these days. Like 10-20 years back, the cycles were pretty long. You would have a recession like once in 8 years, once in 12 years, and so on and so forth. But these days, the cycles have become very short. Every 3 years, every 2 years, we could be looking at a recession. The reason being the whole globe is now stitched together, that one thing happening in one corner of the world is easily affecting another corner of the world, which means your business has to be flexible. If you have too much of fixed cost, when the volume goes down, then you're still stuck with this fixed cost. So how you move this fixed into variable is very, very important. So granular understanding of a company's cost structure is one of the most important portions, because a customer is not willing to pay for these fixed costs. Whatever they're buying from you, as long as it's variable, it's good. But this fixed cost is something that it can make or break a company. So I think this is just a quick math for you to have an understanding of how much fixed and variable costs could affect a product. If you make, let's say, 90 visits a month, with 400,000 rupees as the fixed cost and variable cost being like around 600 rupees per product, if you look at the different ranges of production volume, if you make 90 per month, your cost per product could be 5,000. But if you're making only 10, the cost per product could be 40,000. So just as an example to show you how the fixed cost could really affect the business. So I know any business cannot have zero fixed costs, but then the point is to understand what kind of product are you making and how flexible your business should be, because your customers could be very, very agile. And your business could go from this range of 10 to 90. You could have a big swing. So for those businesses where there is a big swing, you need to look at how to minimize its fixed cost and make it variable, because you see how the cost per product changes based on the fixed and variable cost. So any questions on cost so far? We're going to have one more slide on value chain cost coming up at the end, but any questions before we go into availability or time?
So just one question on for what you're saying is basically we need to outsource as much as we can to reduce the fixed cost. So one question is how do you ensure the reliability of an outsourced infrastructure or service?
Okay, so that's a very, very good question. And in the modern world, it's all about trade-offs. I'll just give a quick example. I work for Caterpillar, and if you look at it, we were also in the past, we had a more than 100-year-old company. We were under a vertical integration. I think critical to customer is something that we need to understand. And I know it's different for different industries. Maybe manufacturing is an easy example. In software or in any other, let's say, businesses, in consulting, different things could be different core for a customer. So for Caterpillar, we consider the engine, chassis, and the axle. These are the only three core components that we tend to keep inside Caterpillar in the modern organization. So everything else is pretty much outsourced. In fact, some portions of the chassis is also outsourced these days. So we need to understand, one, what is core to the customer. So we retain that as an organization, but we just don't just like that outsource it to somebody, but we are giving it to the experts, right? So look at Dell. They have given the monitor to Sony or HP because they are the pioneers in that industry, or Samsung, right? Logitech is the pioneer in keyboard and mouse. So when you use the word outsourcing, it generally tends to give you that, oh yeah, you're giving it to a guy who just does it in a very low cost, some guy who does it, right? But I would look at it for an organization. Outsourcing is a very critical piece, but you need to understand what is a make versus buy. What should I make? What is core for the customer, and what is not core? But give that not core to still an expert, because the integration is important. Only if the outsourced component integrates well with what you make inside the company as a core, as an entire unit, it can work together the success of the customer. So I think it's a detailed topic that need to be discussed. It's all about the trade-off that you want to make and what's core to your customer versus what's non-core. And it's definitely a difficult decision to make, but I would look at outsourcing as something that's imperative, and to understand who's in the market who can deliver that same quality and reliability of what you're trying to outsource, rather than giving it to people who can do it at the lowest cost.
Okay, yeah, thanks. That's a good one.
Yeah. Any other questions on cost? See, again, outsourcing is just one way of looking at the moving from fixed cost to variable cost. The other examples that I have come up in the past is, like, for instance, we used to do entire logistics by ourselves. We had the manpower, we had the machinery, etc. We have a lot of third-party service providers who are doing it today in the modern world, where you do it on piece basis. So you say you move one kit, you get paid so much. You move one truck worth of components, you get paid so much. So you're still paying it on services now. So there are people working within your organization who used to work for you, are not done by third-party service providers. I'm sure this is an example that everybody knows. The printers and fax machines or copiers or whatever, they are not owned by companies now. You pay on a per paper that you print. It's become a service. It used to be a fixed cost. Now it's become variable cost. So you pay only when you use. I think if you really think about it, this entire set of things on the fixed side, you could move it to variable. I feel there's hardly anything except this people portion where you keep it as fixed. Most of it can be moved to variable. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to quickly move to availability. So I know I'm using probably a little bit of a different term here called availability. What is availability?
It's like resources. So whatever the product we need to make.
Okay. So you're defining it in terms of the service provider. Let's just shift that a little bit towards a customer. From a customer standpoint, what does availability mean? Think about Amazon. So you want to order something. What is availability to you?
The product which I'm looking for, it's like in the market currently.
Right.
Technically, so.
Okay. So how quick can you get what you're looking for? So we spoke about how much will you pay for what you're looking for, but then this is also important. How quick can you get what you're looking for? And the usual example that I give is, because I remember this when I was a kid, we wanted to get a telephone in the house. And I think most of you who are old enough would remember, you had a long queue in terms of how long you had to wait. It could be even a couple of years. Having a phone in your house was a privilege. It was luxury. You would have your neighbors come to your house and then use the phone, etc., etc. And now, if you want a phone with a connection, how long do you have to wait?
1 hour.
Yeah. So because the SIM cards were also a wait some time back, but now you get it on the same day. A phone, you get it on the same day, right? So that's what we're talking about availability. Customers are not willing to wait anymore like in those days. We are in a world where everything can be got right here, right now. So I think that's what we're going to talk about in terms of availability. How quick can you get what you have as value to your customer? That's very, very important in the modern world. So we're going to talk about two things here: information flow versus material flow, because in those days, there was always a quotation process where you ask for something and you wait for getting the quote and then you buy it. But today in the modern world, we are talking about that almost being negligible, not just in the retail segment that I'm talking about, even in big investments, like we're talking about buying a huge machinery for a couple of $1 million. We're talking about even the big machines that we sell, which are $3-4 million. We have a price list, in fact. You would know the ballpark and what you're looking for. So the age-old quotation process, which the government companies do float even today from a tender standpoint, etc. As we are moving more into the modern world, it's negligible today from an RFQ to quote standpoint. So order to delivery is something that's very, very critical now in terms from the time that a customer orders till the time that they get the delivery on hand. So that is very critical in terms of how you design the value chain. So customer expectation, I think we already spoke about a phone, a car. How long do you think from order to delivery for a car?
Couple of days.
Days, okay. But if we have cash on hand, can we go today, buy a car, and then walk out with the car?
So, but for a few models, we need to wait around 5 to 6 days.
Okay, good. So what's the difference between going and picking up a car and then versus waiting for 5-6 days? What happens there?
Maybe what we are looking for, it's like the features. We cannot find that one, and color.
Okay,
The
good.
availability again.
So I've got a specific slide on this topic, but sorry, go ahead.
There's anxiety, waiting.
Anxiety, okay. I think we've talked about 3-4 things. I'll just finish that up. One is because you're looking for specific features. So in the manufacturing world, we call it as build to stock, which is build to order. So if you're asking for anything that is, Ford had a very famous saying, you can get any color as long as it's black. So they made I think it was T4 or T20 models that the Ford As long as you mounted it black, they said you get it. The point here is there are some vanilla configurations that they would make. It will be immediately available in stock. But if you're asking for specific features or so, they have to make it to order. So the manufacturing strategy changes. So there is something called as lane differentiation. A lane 1 is immediate availability for the customer. A lane 2 would be kind of something that they have to wait for some time because they're making it to order. And lane 3 is something called as engineered to order. So they have to design something differently for you in order to satisfy the need. That's engineered to order. So that's a good point that you all touched upon. So we can talk about immediate availability to wait and for a few days or few months even. But there's one important point that we missed: supply versus demand. For any new models, generally, if you see the automobile manufacturer or Ford manufacturers, any of these people, they look at understanding the demand in the market before they supply or flood the market, because inventory is something that's a very, very big topic in value chain. It's a very, very important topic, inventory management. But a new model, generally, they test the water to see how much demand we have. So when the demand is more and the supply is less, the customers have to wait. When the supply is more, the demand is less, then we have excess inventory. So those two situations could happen in the examples that we spoke about. We're talking about any component manufacturing today versus machinery manufacturing. So let's just quickly talk about this here. We're talking about an excavator. How long do you think a customer is willing to wait for today to buy an excavator? An excavator could cost you anywhere from 40 to 50 lakhs. How long do you think a customer is willing to wait? In India, I'm talking about in India.
Maybe a month or so, a couple of months.
Yeah, so that's the maximum actually. There are people who walk in with hot cash that they want an excavator like right now, to probably a month or month and a half. And we're talking about like 40, 50 lakhs investment. The point here is, imagine making an excavator within 1.5 months. So how long do you think it takes for us to make an excavator in Caterpillar? Just a rough guess.
About a couple of days.
Exactly. We take maximum of 3 days to manufacture an excavator in our production line. Again, I don't want to make it sound simple, but the point is it does require a lot of coordination on getting the parts from all over the world. But technically, the moment that we start manufacturing the excavator till it comes out completely finished, it is 2.5 days to 3 days. So I think that is the way the world is going towards. If you want a phone today, then even an excavator, there are customers who are willing to wait only maximum a week. If you don't have it, they will just go next door. Availability is a very, very important factor in the modern world. So we spoke about cost, we spoke about time. So the key is what stops certain organizations from moving the parts to the. So what I'll do is I'll skip this slide. We'll come back to this. But the point is, if a product stays within a company for longer duration, then we are adding more and more cost to it. So just think about it. Instead of me making an excavator for 3 days, if I make it for 1 month, okay, I'm spending more time and energy from my organization in order to store the parts, move the parts, more people working on it. So any product or service that is start and stop as quick as possible through the organization, the cost would be at the least. So value has to flow in an organization. It could be a software project that comes into your organization. It could be a customer coming into your hotel to sit and eat. The point is, if the customer is going to sit and eat for 1 hour, let's say in Sarana Bhavan, that table is stuck for 1 hour. They cannot make any other customer sit at the table. If a customer is going to sit and eat a dosa with 60 rupees for 1 hour, then if the table can be used only maximum, let's say 15 hours in a day when the hotel is open, then how much money can they make? So technically, they want the customer to come, eat, and then leave, right? So as quick you can turn around a service or a product, the more money that you make. So value has to flow through an organization. It can be anything. Like I said, it can be a dosa, it can be an excavator, it can be an IT project, it could be a road project by the government. Imagine a government project. The longer it takes, the more money the project takes, right? They have to rent equipment. Many a times, the rented equipment will sit in that bridge or a road for 1 month, and they still have to pay the rent, but the project is not moving. So making the value flow through the organization is important. If you just think about value as something that like a ship or a steamer that goes on a river or a sea, the higher the water level is, we're talking about resources and money. So if there are more rocks in the river or in the sea, then the water level has to be high. Only then the value can flow. So the same way, if the organization has got poor quality, defects, scheduling issues, inefficient layout, all these inefficiencies, then you need to have more and more water for this value to flow, which means more resources, more money. But if the rocks are eliminated, then the water level can be as low as possible and still the value can flow. So the key is, how do you make value flow through your organization? That's very, very important. And holding as minimum as possible the water level is important, which means it will consume less resources. Any questions on this slide before we move on? Okay, so we spoke about this as a cyclical business, and I think this is what we are seeing more often. Just a couple of years back, we saw a deep recession that the overall world went through, and there are speculations we could go through one even right now, but we don't know yet. But the point is, how does then time and money behave in these scenarios? Just give me a few responses on how do you see the cost of an organization or what the customer is willing to pay for, and how long a customer is willing to wait change through this business cycle.
When the organization goes through a trough, I think we incur more cost, and also we incur significantly higher cost.
Yeah, and what's the customer willing to pay during the time?
Lowest.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword. Your cost is high, customers willing to pay only less. The reason being, there are more people probably offering a cutthroat price because the demand is less. So please think about it in terms of supply and demand, also the cost. So what about availability?
When the supply is more, obviously the availability is more.
Yeah. So the market is flooded with a lot of material or products, so you can get it much quicker. The customer is the king. In a recession time, the customer is the king, and in the recovery time, the supplier or the business owners are the king. So I think the key here is we cannot afford to have a business that is pretty rigid as we go through the recession and the recovery. Caterpillar was a company 20 years back. We did not understand the cycle, and we are mostly catering to the mining sector and the energy sector and construction sectors. Most of these three different business segments go through different cycles. While mining is low, construction could be up and energy could be up.
Jay, are you sharing?
Yeah, I think he's on mute.
Uh,
He went on mute actually.
Yeah.
Oh, are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Jay. Yes,
Oh,
Jay.
I don't know how I went on mute. Okay.
And the screen is also not in share.
What about now?
Have you shared the screen, sir?
Not
Yes,
yet.
I have. Yeah, I have.
We don't see it, Jay. Maybe
Okay.
you can take out and then share it again. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I had a internet blackout suddenly. Okay. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I was saying was that we need to look at how to define the business, the value chain that will be flexible and agile through these business cycles. So it's very, very important to make sure that we are moving the fixed cost as much into the variable, and then looking at even our business partners to do the same, because we are as good as our suppliers. In the past, we've seen suppliers as somebody, yeah, we'll move all the risk to them. But if our suppliers go bankrupt during the down cycle, when we come to the up cycle, we don't have a supplier to help us. So we see suppliers as partners now, and not necessarily as somebody whom we just push all our dirty work to. So it's important that the entire value chain is taken care through these business cycles. Okay, so this is something that I wanted to spend some time on, and something that is core. These are the building blocks of the value chain engineering, which is one is product design, process design, and then the value chain design. In the past, these three things were taught differently and independently. The engineering organization would just design a product. They will just do something like a rocket science. They'll build something really complicated. They don't really care about whether we can even manufacture it or not. So in today's world, we have something called as design for manufacturability. So when we do the product design, we really think about, can we even manufacture it? Okay. So at the same time, we look at the entire value chain. So I'll just take you through an example again. Come on, it's not progressing. Okay, there you go. So you have an excavator again. I know I've been giving excavator examples because in my previous role, I was a factory manager for the excavators. So when product design, initially, the product was thought about from a customer's angle. We have always designed something really complicated. But the question is, can we make it at the lowest possible cost? So we have value engineering as the upfront, where we look at each piece of the excavator to see, is the customer willing to pay for this? For instance, even this grill here. This is a grill that is generally used for when the rocks fall on the cabin, it will protect the glass here. There are a lot of these things that used to be part of the base machine, but it is offered as attachment now. But when you look at a product, you don't build this complete product together. There are a lot of attachments. So we talked about features earlier, right? So the question is, not every customer is going to require all of these attachments. If many of you have bought, let's say, an example of vacuum cleaner, you would have 10,000 different attachments in that box. But some of the attachments, you don't even know what is it used for, right? I remember there's one for even spraying a nice perfume within the whole room, how you can do a blower on that. I've never used that attachment on my vacuum cleaner. So the point here is, when you do that, put all the attachments in a machine, the customer could be, paying more for an attachment that they never use. So and also the point is, all these attachments here can be plug in and play, right? If it is integral part of the machine inside, then it's very difficult from a process standpoint. So you design a product where the attachments are all like bolt-on kind of thing. So I'll go to the next one, which is the process design. I already touched upon this briefly. So if you look at a make to stock, we just make vanilla excavators and then keep stocking them. So those customers who want it immediately, like time is low and they're willing to pay a lower cost, you can just get a vanilla machine just right from the stock. You could pay a premium a little bit because you want it immediately, but that's really the lowest cost machine at the lowest possible time. And then comes the make to order. You specifically say, I want this and I want my cabin to have this such and such, and this particular attachments. It's a make to order. So it's going to take a little longer and a little costlier. And then this is the modern concept now. We're talking about finish to order. If I'm going to do make to order most of the time, it's going to be much a longer wait. In fact, this finish to order should be somewhere here. To avoid the lead time on the customer lead time, the modern concept is finish to order. so that you make a base machine and then keep it ready. And then whenever the customer asks for a particular type of attachment, you finish it to order and then give it to the customer. Then you have engineer to order. You really make a machine bottom up based on specific applications. There are certain applications in terms of dredging, in terms of road constructions, where you have some specific applications for specific environments. Like in the cold regions, there are specific things that we need to engineer to order. So that's like the most long lead time and the highest cost. The point here is the manufacturing process has to be thought ahead of time in the product design, so that you will think about these and think about what the customer is going to be willing to pay for from a cost standpoint. All these things we're talking about at a new product stage itself. Manufacturing is not an afterthought. So today, these are all done concurrently. I'm going to go to the value chain design portion. These are done concurrently. The product design, process design, and value chain design today in the modern world is done concurrently. So the value chain design portion, you're going to think about the supplier, the manufacturing, and the distribution. This is very, very key, because everything is knit like this throughout the world. I could be buying many of my excavator parts from the US, South America, or China, where we manufacture it in India. So the question is where my suppliers are, where is my manufacturing footprint, and how do I distribute it? Okay. So if India is going to be a manufacturing base, I could still have a customer in South America. So how do I ship this excavator back here? So because the sailing time from here to here is almost 45 to 60 days. So a customer is not going to wait for 60 days for an excavator to come from here to here. So we need to have something called as a product distribution center in South America. Or if the volume is significant enough, I have another manufacturing facility here. So this portion is what's going to be the value chain design, to understand the overall customer base, which product is going to be manufactured in which manufacturing base. Do I make some of this to stock and then distribute it from there? So this portion of value chain design is very, very important. And like I said, it is not an afterthought. When we do the product design, all these three go together. So when, let's say this particular attachment, when we think about the manufacturing base in India, this particular attachment could be something that the customer would be buying from a supplier here through our distribution center. This attachment might never come to India. So that should be something that we think during the production design itself, because we need to see the manufacturing capability of this particular attachment throughout the globe. So having product design, process design, and value chain design concurrently, even during the NPI stage, is the most important piece in value chain engineering. Any questions on this? Okay, if there are no questions, I'll move on to this portion on value chain costs. Just an example. Like again, maybe in the previous slide, you saw on how the manufacturing base could be in different parts of the globe, and then the customers are spread throughout. If you really think about it, we already spoke about the different costs for heavy engineering products. These are the different costs that we could incur. Let's say if I'm going to export it to another country, so I've got my material cost, which is variable. The variable value add is what is the manpower, the freight, and all that I add. And this is the period cost, which is the fixed cost. So all this together is what is the cost of manufacturing one product within the facility. So if you look at it, my overall cost is close to $200,000, and the manufacturing cost is hardly $80,000. Okay. For shipping it from one country to another, it could be even like, let's say $50,000 in customs and duty. And then for big heavy engineering products, we need to ship it in multi-piece. So then we need to assemble them all together at the customer base. And then there's going to be charges to move that particular component from the port to the site. So when the price point for the customer is going to be only $150,000, this is the difference stack up, which all the way goes to $200,000 because we're manufacturing in another country. But look at this cost. When I said $80,000 is the manufacturing cost, in the destination country, the same thing could be the manufacturing cost alone can be $120,000, but we don't have the remaining cost here. I don't know if I'm going too fast, but the point I'm trying to drive is we generally look at only the manufacturing cost. In this case, this facility Y manufacturing cost is much higher than the manufacturing cost of this particular facility. Okay, but if you look at the value chain stack up, this facility moving that part from this facility to the destination country is going to be much expensive, and it is much beyond the price point. So when the price point is $150,000, we need to look at where can the manufacturing base be, where can our suppliers be, how do I distribute this particular product. Designing that value chain, engineering that value chain is a very, very critical piece to it. Any questions? Do you want me to repeat this?
Sir, here what you are saying is, for example, we need to manufacture a car. So what are the sub-assemblies we are shipping to facility Y, and there itself we are doing the assembly and selling the product. Am I right, sir?
Yeah, okay. So this value chain cost is about end-to-end, not just the sub-assemblies. So from a customer standpoint, the customer is willing to buy, again, let's take an excavator example. The customer is willing to pay $150,000, let's say. And this is the destination country, let's say again, South America. Making it in India at a lower cost and shipping it to South America is not a wise idea, because a competitor in South America could be expensive, but they can meet the customer's cost, the customer's price, and still make money. So the value chain design portion looks at this to say, do I have my manufacturing facility in South America, or do I have it in India? So if I draw the same chart for an Indian customer, this facility will not be competitive, but this facility will be competitive. This is the end-to-end cost for a product from a customer standpoint and the business standpoint. So designing this value chain when we are making the product and process is important to have this view. Yeah. If you're going to understand the customer in South America but ship it from India, it might not make sense, even though the manufacturing cost in India could be cheaper than South American costs.
Yes, sir.
So the key is the cost aspect is not anymore only about the manufacturing or the service cost, but end-to-end cost of a value chain. The same thing applies for a restaurant. The same thing applies for an educational institution. Understanding what's the end-to-end value chain cost of an educational institution is more important. Only then you will know whether you're making money or not. If not, 3 years you'll run the school or college, and then 5 years you'll run the school, college. Then you'll find out that you made so much losses that you cannot come out of it. So understanding the value chain cost is very, very important. And it is not an afterthought. Again and again, I'm repeating, value chain design is not an afterthought. You do that when you do the product design and the process design, so that you know whether you're making money or not from a product or a service.
I think if you look at some other scenario, the startups and other entrepreneurs, when they see with a skewed thought, they jump into the business without looking at this big picture. And when they feel the heat of it, they're neither able to go forward nor come back. So that is the scenario, I guess. And especially in today's world, it is very important to look at value chain, equally important than like other manufacturing and servicing.
Yeah. Okay. So this is going to be my last slide in this presentation today. So the value chain mapping is a very important exercise. I think many of you would already been exposed to this. But again, like I said, the customer stands first. So we generally draw a value chain map starting with the customer to see what's the value that's going to flow through an organization. How does it flow? Who are the different business partners that it flows through? And if you see on the top of the value chain map, you have information flow. And here you would have the material or value that flows through the organization. This could be a transaction as well. This could be as simple as, let's say, how money flows through a financial institution through the organization. It could be as simple as a loan processing through a bank. So, so drawing a value chain map, the strength of it is to understand how customer gets the product or service, how long do they have to wait in terms of the value chain lead time and response times, and also how much does it cost throughout the organization. So we spoke about time and money so far, and value chain map is a very, very beautiful exercise that you can do for your organizations to understand how that particular value flows through the organization and how long a customer is waiting, or how much the customer has to pay for that value. So in a typical organization, especially, I know I've not shown it here, there could be a lot of inventory that is there between two processes. Especially before a warehouse, you could have a couple of $1 million worth of inventory sitting, and you're technically paying inventory carrying charges, because $2 million, instead, if you put it in a savings account, you could get like maybe like 4 or 5% of interest rather than having that inventory sitting here. So once when you make everything visual on how it flows, what are the different steps that are followed in an organization to get to the value of the customer, it really gives you that bird's eye view. And value chain map again can be as macro level as possible and as detailed as possible. You could still take one particular process and then zoom in and then draw a value chain map there. The key is to understand where is the value struck. So if the customer is willing to wait only for 1 month, and the value chain lead time is 1.5 months for your organization, how do you go and cut that half a month in the process? Where is the longest wait? It could be this process here, it could be this process here. You will know which process to go work on to reduce that lead time. Same thing from a cost standpoint. You will know which process is actually consuming the most cost in your organization, and then go attack that. So there's a more visual representation of your entire value chain. I know we don't have much time now to talk in detail on how you draw the value chain map, but this, just like the Cyclical that we spoke about, it could be multiple value chain maps linked together that you can draw a bigger value chain map, or it can get to a specific machine, a specific transaction within the organization, and then draw the value chain map for that. So it all depends on the business need, and this is a very powerful tool that you can use for your organization. I think that's all.
The value chain map and value stream mapping are same or different?
I think it is very, like we spoke earlier, when you look at a specific manufacturing process or a specific process, you call it as a value stream. When you're talking about end-to-end, then it is a value chain map, because here you're talking about the end customer. In the value stream map, what happens is you'll be talking about internal customers.
Okay.
If I'm drawing it for an assembly, let's say a machine assembly area, the assembly area, the end customer could be, let's say, the paint plant, or the end customer could be the distribution center. So because that assembly shop is the value stream, but when you're looking at a value chain map, it is the end-to-end view. The end customer comes into picture.
So it's a macro view.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So the granular view will be a value stream map.
Okay. My second question is, should we move from, let's say, the forward, or should we come from backward? That means from value, we should come back to input, or from input, we should go back to value.
It is. Yeah, it's always recommended to draw the value chain map starting with the customer. And because pitfall is people sit in front of a computer to draw the value chain map. What we have done in the past is always take a pencil and paper and then walk through the value chain. It could be a transactional process, like again I said. It could be when a customer is coming to a bank for wanting a loan. You follow through that process literally with a paper and pencil, and then map that process rather than doing in front of the computer. So it starts with the customer. You would draw the reverse. You would start with the customer and then go back all the way to the supplier to draw the value chain map. And so the key takeaway from a value chain map is this at the bottom, which is how long does it take for the entire value chain? Because that's where you define the availability. You will know how quick the customer wants the product or service, and how long is your actual process taking to get the product to the customer, then you know, see, there is a trick here. There is something called as lead time, there is something called a response time. When I told you that we are doing the excavator in 3 days, that is actually not the lead time, it is the response time, because I have already got inventory of a lot of different products sitting in the factory, and we turn that inventory around. So you need not look at having the overall process to reduce to a certain extent, because it will be very expensive to shrink the overall lead time. Rather, you will look at response times. So that's where the trick is in terms of meeting the customer's needs. So the end product of the value chain map is understanding the lead time and response time, and also the overall cost. Okay, I'm just 1 minute over the scheduled time for the presentation. So that was my last slide. So I'm open for any questions on all the topics that we covered so far.
And yeah, I think since there are a lot of one-of-a-kind project-centric participants are there in this audience, maybe I'll take a couple of minutes to give a project context. Okay?
Sure.
Setting up a factory or developing a new software product or anything, more or less the same what Jay spoke about. We use a different kind of stages. Okay, if you look from a bottom up, we do activities with resources that gets into deliverables, and then we assemble or integrate deliverables to get the product, and then the product is deployed at a customer site, and then there is something called change adoption. Okay, that's again a big area. Customers should be willing to adapt to the new way of doing things, and then that comes the benefit, actually the value that we are talking about. So it is something called output, outcome, benefit, and then you see the business value and objective to the stakeholders. So that actually takes months, sometimes years to settle within the organization. So that's why all these agile methodologies, I'm just now drawing this to agile world. So they again use this word extensively, value stream mapping. They say you start from the customer, what adds value to the customer, and then for which what should be the outcome that should be there at the customer side, and then what should be the deliverable, what kind of behavioral, cultural changes that should happen, and accordingly you dovetail your development process or methodology or approach. So I'm just talking from a project world. So it becomes much more now very meaningful. Gone are the days of waterfall methodology. So we need to look from the value perspective, and then shorten the delivery cycle or the project life cycle and make it more iterative. So I think that's a bit of piece I wanted to give it to some of the audiences. Since from January onwards, your examination pattern will be more from an agile perspective. So this value delivery is much more critical. I thought I'll just leave this so that you can make a connection between what he spoke about all this to the project world. Okay. So thank you, Jay. I think now we'll open up for questions. He gave a lot of pointers and a lot of information. It would be good if you ask questions because your questions may be from a very, very different angle. Maybe from software, maybe from construction, maybe from pharmaceutical or oil and gas. Okay, you ask questions, and we are having people here from different field. They'll be able to take answer from yours. In the meantime, if anyone is hard pressed for time, in the chat box, there is a feedback link is given. Please, you can click that link and then put your feedback. and also your information. The PDU certificate will be processed based on the feedback and your contact details. So I thought I'll just inform you, and then I'll open it up for questions. You can unmute and then ask questions, or you can even put it on the chat box. We can take it up with Jay.
So Jay, this is Benny. The quick question: do you think the value chain engineering is more suitable for product, development? Not because you gave the example, but I'm just asking.
Just to understand the question, so are you asking if this is more applicable, like product-based than services and transactions? Is that the question?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely a question that I get asked very often. My answer is, see, this probably started from the manufacturing world. See, I myself am mostly from a supply chain background. So I have done several projects and drawn value chain maps for the transaction flow. I've headed a lot of teams where entirely it is about transactions. We receive orders from customers and then process them, and then we raise invoices and then send it back. So a completely transaction world can be mapped here. This is from the manufacturing world, but it is equally applicable for the transactional world as well. And you would be surprised. I have worked for hospitals. I've worked for Brigham's Women's Hospital in Boston. There are a lot of these things that we deployed there. Like for instance, the two-bin systems that are used in the manufacturing realm, that we deployed in the operation theaters, where they were scrapping like more than millions of dollars of expired medicines. So we implemented a Kanban system in the operation theaters. So where I'm heading to is, this is from the manufacturing world. So I think understanding the background and the tools and seeing how to apply it for the transactional world is where the gap today is. So I would say these techniques and these concepts are equally applicable for the transactional world or the project environment as well. And I have done several of those examples within Caterpillar, and my experience as a consultant outside Caterpillar as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions from anyone?
Another follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
You had mentioned about the time taken from RFQ to quote is now kind of negligible. So this is more of a theoretical question. Do you see a trend where companies can be, say, certified for, value engineering certified? That means, say, do you see a possibility of, say, a software which can actually, this map that you made on the top, can it be a software which will be connected to different value engineering certified companies, and it allows you to actually make your plan because everything is so time critical, and lead time versus response time. So if you want to do a response, then you need to know exactly, say within the company, you want to know exactly what is the status of the inventory. So what do you see the role of software in overall managing this whole chain?
Okay, good question again, and I'll take that as two portions here. My personal view, the proof is in the pudding. Okay, so more than a certification, if a company can deliver the product at the least cost in the shortest possible time, then that's the company which is really doing value chain engineering at the best. So I personally don't see this to become like a certification in the future, but you'll never know. There are several organizations today are looking more into lean manufacturing, getting certified by several companies. But then I feel more the proof is in the pudding, and because the customer needs are pretty dynamic, and you cannot just say, okay, my value chain design is over and I'm a great value chain company, because the customer segment can move from one to another. The customer base can move from one place to another, as a supply base can change. So if you're going to be agile, you need to keep reinventing your value chain as the demand moves, as the business moves. So that's how I would take the first question. The second, to the question about a software, that is a very, 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 very important portion, because supply chain or value chain visibility is something that's very, very important. Several examples that I can quote from our company as well. Because of the long lead times, the moment a supply, in fact, we have sometimes visibility to even where the components are in a tier 1, tier 2 supply base. And the moment it leaves at the supply base, we have complete traceability all the way before we put it on the machine. Most of the products are RFID, most of the products are barcoded, where we can trace through several softwares on, has it left the supplier's dock? Is it there on an ocean liner somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean? Or is it the port? Is it on a truck? So that visibility is very important. And I remember my first Dell desktop laptop that I ordered 20 years back. I was able to see exactly in which portion of the factory it was being manufactured. This is 20 years back. When I ordered it, I knew exactly when I would get it, and it showed in the different portions of the value chain. So the point is, integrating the value chain is very important, like I said. So there is definitely a lot of requirement of softwares. So ERPs like SAP, JD Edwards are available, but then converting the data more visual on GUIs to show the different people who are planning the whole value chain is very, very critical. Yeah. So there are several softwares in terms of reporting that we use, Tableau or Power BI, etc. today within CAD, where we are using that for visibility as well. We have some homegrown softwares in terms of, we call it assurance of supply centers, GMM. There are several softwares that we use internally for the visibility. So I would say it's a very important portion, especially going more towards Industry 4.0. That's very, very vital. Yeah.
Okay. So what I meant was a multi-company, integration. So yeah, I guess if it works for within the company, you can probably scale it up to multiple companies.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, sir. So any further questions from any of the participants, or anyone would like to share anything about the point discussed so long? Meanwhile, I request all the participants to share the feedback in the link. So we will get back to you, get in touch with you for the future webinars as well. And also we will share your PDU certificate in the mail ID which you mentioned in the feedback link.
Thanks to the Pro Ventures.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you for the very interesting session, very clear, very visual, nice examples.
Okay, thank you. And I wish I could have given more transactional examples, because I'm more from the manufacturing sector. Maybe next time we'll have more examples from the project world and the IT sector. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It was a well done webinar. The participants were intact till the end. So that shows it was like how interesting it was. So
okay,
we need to really thank you for the kind of examples and the points we discussed.
Yeah, thank you. And I definitely appreciate this opportunity to share the experience and this feedback. So, and all the feedback and questions have also made me think of a lot of things that I have not thought about. So definitely a good opportunity for me to learn from this as well. So I thank everybody for the participants and the questions that were asked. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Definitely, sir. Sir,
A quick question.
Yeah.
Did you say you're going to share this presentation as a link?
I'll leave that to Pro Ventures. I've already shared it with them. Probably they will get back to you on
we
this.
will do that, sir. So you please mention, submit your feedback. We will share the presentation.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. It was a nice one. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. So once again, on behalf of ProVentures, we thank you all for joining the session. So please submit your feedback, and we will keep in touch with you for future webinars.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you, all of you.
Have a good
Okay,
evening.
have a
Thank
good
you.
evening. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye-bye.